Welcome to Top Shift 144. Elite celebrated its 40th anniversary last month on the 20th of September. It currently holds the Guinness record for the longest running computer game franchise. Released originally on the BBC Micro in the UK and then ported to most computer platforms, even the SNES, the game had many firsts which are taken for granted these days, i.e. an open world where you could practically do anything you like if you had the money, proper 3D combat, procedurally generated 8 galaxies of 256 systems, and various numbers of enemy ship types dependent on the platform. And all that in less memory than this Word document that I'm reading from right now. David Braben and Ian Bell are probably sick of middle-aged and older nerds telling them that Elite is what got them started with coding, so allow me to add myself to that list. I could go on about the development struggles that David Braben and Ian Bell had dealing with publishers, how the technical challenges of the game were overcome, or even the legal troubles that caused controversy with Elite's sequels, especially Frontier First Encounters. However, many more YouTubers have done a better job than myself, and I'll supply links to those in the video description below. Instead, I'd like to talk about what this game means to me and why I've played it and its sequels for 40 years, especially the last 10 where I've been involved with the Live Radio podcast, which is exclusively about Elite Dangerous. In 1984, I wasn't considered an academic student. I had several issues with reading and writing, and I was only acceptable at level at maths. These days, I'd probably be diagnosed with a mild form of ADHD. However, this was the 80s, so you were considered either thick or lazy. The one bright spot was we had an after-school computer club. The teacher, whose name I've forgotten of, much to my regret, would let us look and play various games on BBC computers if we tried to work out how they worked. One of those games was Elite. Honestly, few people did the latter. They mostly used the club to play computer games. When Elite was released, you had to take into account the platform. A BBC microcomputer would be the equivalent of £1,100 today, and if you wanted a disk drive with that, you're probably looking at the equivalent of £2,000, so it was out of reach for many people. Although Elite was also released on the Econ Electron, that version was deemed inferior due to the lack of enemy ships in the game. However, playing Elite did spark in me that question of how did they do that? And it got me interested in coding. And with a couple of months, I'd actually written a simple platforming game in BASIC on the BBC. It was rubbish, but it was still a working game. It was about this time that someone at the computer club said they enjoyed these fighting fantasy books, and there was this new series called Lone Wolf, which was better. Now, I credit these books, Ian Livingstone, Stephen Jackson, and especially Joe Dever's Lone Wolf, got me into reading. My reading age went from 2 years behind to almost a year ahead in approximately 6 months. However, it was Elite that inspired me to look at maths differently. You could create flying spaceships with maths, so I wanted to know how you did that. So my maths started improving. When Elite came out a year later on my computer, the ZX Spectrum, I lost hours to it, much to my parents' worry. But, having gained the Elite rank, by then I was actually generating my own 3D wireframe models. Again, using BASIC. They didn't move very fast, but it was a start. Now, by 1988, I'd updated my computer to the Amiga, and the first game I got on that was, of course, Elite. However, despite the updated, filled-in polygon graphics and the pretty UI, the gameplay hadn't changed, and that's when I hit what I call the dangerous wall. That's when you get to the rank of dangerous, you've got all the best equipment, and you've probably done most of the secret missions, and all you've got left to do is grind your way to Elite. Because when you reach the rank of dangerous, you're actually only a quarter of the way to Elite. That's a lot of ships to kill, and this grind still affects the modern game if you're not prepared for it. So, when David Braben released Frontier, 9 years after the original, again on the Amiga, I jumped on it. I had the more modern Amiga 1200 and was blown away that they'd fit the entire Milky Way galaxy on one 808K floppy disk. Everything was more significant. The ships looked smooth. The systems had gone from a single star and planet to a complete solar system. And again, this sparked the question, how did he do that? Again, I lost hours, but something felt a bit off. I enjoyed the exploration, the shipbuilding and the mission boards, but I felt disappointed by the actual ship-to-ship combat. Complete Newtonian physics had been implemented, which, although much more realistic, wasn't as much fun, and I walked away from the game after reaching again the dangerous wall. At this point, I started my first coding job. Ironically, I had the opportunity to work for a game company. However, when I asked the staff why the office had sleeping bags and the resulting crunch culture, I took a non-game development role, as I still wanted to have a social life. I did attempt to write games on the side, but after coding all day, I wanted to relax. You can either write games or you can play them. It isn't easy to do both. By the time Frontier First Encounters had come out, I had transitioned to PC and bought it as soon as possible. However, due to the horrendous bugs and the fact that the game used the same Newtonian physics combat, I didn't even make it past Mostly Harmless before walking away, much preferring Wing Commander's Privateer and Privateer 2, primarily because of the ship-to-ship combat. Frontier's First Encounters were repeatedly patched to fix bugs, but it didn't sell anywhere near as much as Frontier did, and that was the last we heard from the Elite series for quite a while. There were promises for FFE to go open source, but that never happened. It was never stated why, but people suspected it was related to the ongoing legal case between Brayburn and Bell at the time. However, in 2005, a developer called John Jordan had reverse engineered Frontier First Encounters and released it as a patch for the original owners. This allowed it to run on modern machines, fixed several bugs, and added lateral thrusters to the flight model. As the iWar series had made Newtonian physics combat fun, and I was very disappointed with Freelancer, I decided to give Frontier First Encounters another chance. Only this time it worked. Again, I lost hours trying to get to the Thargoid ship, which was the main goal, and I was asking, how did they do that yet again? In parallel, an open-sourced Elite clone called Oolite was developed based on the original mechanics and flight model. Many of the original fans joined in with the development of mods for it, trying to create a cross between the original Elite, but using the galaxy of Frontier. I restarted Frontier First Encounters again when FF3D3 and GLFFE updated the graphics engines, and ironically I was still playing through FFE3D3 when the Elite Dangerous Kickstarter was announced. This happened after I'd already backed Squadron 42 and Star Citizen from Chris Roberts. That was a very costly month. At this point, I had developed a mobile game beside my usual work, and this game was put up in the Nokia store just before Nokia was gutted by Microsoft. Ironically, due to the nature of mobile Java, it was straightforward to extract the executable from a phone and download it. 6 months later, I found out there had been thousands of downloads of my game on a Russian website, and looking through my 5 sales, I found all 5 of them had been sold in Russia. Now this dented my enthusiasm for creating games for quite a while. So I've been playing Elite Dangerous for 11 years, from the alpha to the present day. What's kept me going is the flight model, which closely resembles the original, but you can still flip over to the Newtonian-like physics if you want to. The 400 billion star systems to explore is a big draw, and the fact that the content, although it hasn't been gushing through, there's been enough variety to stop the dangerous wall from reoccurring. So, to mark the 40th anniversary milestone, Frontier has released a free Ruby decal and some lovely Ruby skins at about 10,000 ARCs each, which is about £5. Now this has caused the usual complaints on the forums about how much more expensive cosmetics are in the store. However, it must be pointed out that Elite Dangerous is now a 10-year-old game that needs alternative funding rather than just relying on unit sales to continue. With the new ship, the Mandalay and Powerplay 2 all being part of next month's Ascension update, and there's still the unknown feature and additional new ship coming, the future for the next 6 months or so for Elite looks good. Even after that, there are still lots of areas the game can expand into, i.e. landing on new planet types, the much requested ship interiors, or even on-foot VR. As long as the game still makes Frontier money, these things are possible. Ironically, I've started writing games again with one in development even as I speak. However, every time an Elite installment is released, I am reminded that without the inspiration of the original game, I probably wouldn't have the career that I have now. And it all comes from the question, how the heck did they do that?